Order agenda to create a one-world government that rules over humanity is not only political, it is also spiritual and based on what is known as the New Age. This can be verified with irrefutable documentation. Most of the Christians doing this kind of work have been silenced, so I set out across the border to speak to the few researchers that are still left. There are not many researchers left who have not been deceived by the New Age. Speaking with these people helped confirm my position even more. The New World Order exists. The elite are occultists who adhere to New Age doctrines, and they are responsible for this new trend of discrediting Christianity, Jesus Christ, and the Christian New World Order researchers. There is a voluminous amount of data that I have obtained in my research on this subject, but after watching this production, do not believe me. Don't believe a word of what I'm saying. Do your own independent research and verify this for yourself.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
Here's the way they look at it. Here's their metaphor. Adam and Eve were held prisoner in the Garden of Eden by an unjust, cruel, and vindictive God. Until Lucifer, through his agent Satan, set man free from this garden by giving him the gift of intellect. Through the use of intellect, man will conquer the earth, will conquer nature, and will himself become God. It's taught in every Masonic temple in this land. Every secret brotherhood, every secret society, every mystical temple, every occult organization teaches the Luciferian philosophy.
To understand the New World Order and the New Age worldview, we must go back into history and examine its origins. But first we must define our terms. By New Age, I am speaking about a worldview that has many facets and components, such as astrological and zodiacal beliefs in the New Age concept, channeling higher powers to achieve knowledge, meditation, the belief that all is one or forms of monism, the belief that we can attain godhood, esotericism, or in other words, reinterpreting ancient texts to find hidden meanings and unify all religious belief into one, the belief that we need a one-world system for the coming age of Aquarius. By New World Order, I am talking about a political agenda to create a one-world system, one-world government, one-world economy, unity of humanity into one organism, control over humanity, and submission of the masses.
But today, the largest countries of the world have agreed a global plan for recovery and reform. I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation.
To understand what is going on today with respect to the New World Order and the New Age movement, we must have recourse to the 19th century organization called the Theosophical Society. This organization in particular, among others, is largely responsible for the modern New Age movement and the political doctrine known as the New World Order. The founder of this organization was a woman named Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Born August 12, 1831, Helena Blavatsky was very interested early in her life in the supernatural and the mythological. From 1848 to 1858, Blavatsky would travel the world to ascertain an understanding of the religious traditions of the world. She claimed to have traveled to South America, Egypt, Canada, France, Greece, Mexico, Tibet, India, Germany, and England during this time. It is said that during this travel she learned many mysteries, secrets, and occult knowledge from every walk of life. With all of this new esoteric information in her mind, she moved to New York in 1873 Then in 1875, she formed an occult organization called the Theosophical Society. She founded this society with two men, Colonel Henry Steele Olcott and William Quan Judge. According to Olcott, Theosophy already had thousands of members and branches all over the world by 1885. After New York, Blavatsky and Olcott established the Theosophical headquarters in India, and the membership roster grew increasingly as time went on. Blavatsky's influence came from her writings. Her first book was entitled Isis Unveiled, published in 1877. She started a magazine in 1887 called Lucifer Magazine. Her principal work, The Secret Doctrine, was then published in 1888. She then wrote The Key to Theosophy and The Voice of Silence. These works are now famous, and contained in these writings are the doctrines that helped mold the New Age movement to what it is today. It is said that part of Blavatsky's book, The Secret Doctrine, was channeled to her through an ascended master or highly evolved being called Kuthumi, who spoke to her. Belief in these ascended masters who communicate to humanity is very crucial when studying the New Age. We will look at that doctrine later. The age concept that says humanity is leaving the age of Pisces and entering the golden era or age of Aquarius was popularized by Blavatsky. She taught Theosophists, at any rate, some of them who understand the hidden meaning of the universally expected avatars, messiahs, socioshis, and Christs, know that it is no end of the world, but the consummation of the age, i.e. the close of a cycle, which is now fast approaching. Again, the messianic cycle of the man connected with Pisces. It is a cycle, historical, and not very long, but very occult, lasting about 2,155 solar years. It occurred 2,410 and 255 BC, or when the equinox entered into the sign of Ram, and again into that of Pisces. When it enters in a few years the sign of Aquarius, psychologists will have some extra work to do, and the psychic idiosyncrasies of humanity will enter on a great change. These Theosophists teach that Jesus was simply a representation of the age of Pisces, and that he was an initiate into the mystery schools, or cults of spiritual teachers and masters. They teach people that the new age of Aquarius is going to be that of a utopia, where the world unites into a one-world system, the exiting out of Jesus' age, and the entering into a new world teacher's age. They say each age is accompanied by a great world teacher, be it Buddha, Jesus, etc. So for the advent of the age of Aquarius, they claim a new world teacher will guide humanity into it. Blavatsky was reluctant to fuse these theosophic beliefs with politics, however. Nonetheless, she still advocated monism and a one-world brotherhood, or uniting, of mankind. In Blavatsky's book, The Key to Theosophy, she lists three main goals of theosophy: universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, color, or creed, to promote the study of the world's religions, and to investigate the hidden mysteries of nature. As time went on, theosophy got very popular. Many prominent figures would join the Theosophical Society from all over the world, and many popular doctrines of today's New Age movement would be molded and shaped by them. Theosophy is the first major New Age group, and they are largely responsible for many of the modern New Age beliefs, including the belief that Jesus represented the sun god. After studying the occult and the esoteric in depth, I have come to the conclusion that the Zeitgeist movement and the Zeitgeist films are based on Theosophy, Freemasonry, and the New Age. For those who are unfamiliar, in 2007, a man named Peter Joseph released a film called Zeitgeist. This film received millions of views on the internet and became very popular. Then in 2008, Zeitgeist Addendum, the sequel, came out. From there, Peter Joseph established the Zeitgeist movement.
Whether Zeitgeist was a film that was intended by Peter Joseph or whoever was behind it to be what it ended up being, I don't know, but I can say that the message that's being expressed by Zeitgeist is without a doubt the most clear depiction of the mystery school ideology, and it's done in such a way to be, it's kind of what I've described as a sort of mystery schools for dummies. It's a way to get people that normally wouldn't be setting foot to any various secret societies. It's a way to indoctrinate them and get them to believe in the same sort of elitist mindset without having to go through any particular initiation. It's also usually accompanied with an idea of pride, that is that the people believe that what they believe is only for a select few, and that sort of has this way of sticking with them, and that nobody believes what I believe, and so it's sort of this elitist mindset that comes with that as well.
The first Zeitgeist film was divided into 3 sections. The second section was about 9/11 being an inside job. The third section was about the corruption of the Federal Reserve. I have no real issue with the last 2 sections, but since the release of the first Zeitgeist film, Peter Joseph, the creator, has distanced himself from the 9/11 issue altogether. This makes me wonder if the only reason he spoke about 9/11 in the first film was to get the 9/11 truth movement on board with his agenda. The first section of the film is what I have an issue with. Contained in this section is the modern belief system of the New Age movement, the Theosophical Society, and Freemasonry.
With the Zeitgeist, it's, Satan's good at what he does, bottom line. And the first one, what they do is they come right out, and in the first segment, I think the first 38 minutes, they just go after Jesus Christ, his deity. Basically, what they try to do is convince everyone that Jesus Christ is just a knockoff of Horus and a lot of the other pagan deities, and they try to draw all these parallels and similarities. These parallels and similarities have all been debunked by Bible scholars and things. In fact, I think there's even a couple challenges up on the internet, the Zeitgeist challenge, where they offer money if they can actually. So they've been debunked. I've done, oh my word, I don't know how many teachings debunking both movies. But if somebody were to see that for the first time and not know any different, oh hey, it sounds convincing, sounds, this or that. And so what they've got to do is discredit the Word of God, the deity of Jesus Christ.
As Theosophy grew, it produced influential figures such as Annie Wood Besant, born October 1st, 1847. She was a Marxist and a socialist. Besant was so inclined towards socialism that she defended it in public debates. One such debate was conducted between her and a man by the name of G.W. Foote, a secularist who supported republicanism. The debate was held at the Hall of Science on February 2nd, 9th, 16th, and 23rd, 1887, a 4-night debate series. The title of the debate was, "Is Socialism Sound?" Angelique Richardson and Chris Willis from the University of London Institute for English Studies, when commenting on Besant's worldview, note, quote, "The socialist feminist Annie Besant joined the Marxist-based Social Democrat Federation, SDF, in the 1880s. Annie Besant met the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, in 1890, and she quickly read Blavatsky's material. Besant recorded her first acquaintance with Blavatsky. She wrote, quote, "I was standing with my hand in her firm grip and looking for the first time in this life straight into the eyes of HPB. We rose to go, and for a moment veil lifted, and 2 brilliant, piercing eyes met mine, and with a yearning throb in the voice, 'Oh, my dear Mrs. Besant, if you would only come with us.' I said a commonplace, polite goodbye, and turned away with some inanely courteous and evasive remark. 'Child,' she said to me long afterwards, 'your pride is terrible. You are as proud as Lucifer himself.'" Besant would get involved with the secret society known as Freemasonry. In 1902, she established the International Order of Co-Freemasonry, and then set up lodges all over the world with theosophic underpinnings. Theosophy, Freemasonry, and Marxism are all connected with the New Age movement. Besant would become president of the Theosophical Society in 1908. As I give you the history and lay the framework for the origins of the modern New World Order ideology and the New Age movement, it is important to note the role of Freemasonry. As previously noted, Theosophy and Freemasonry were somewhat affiliated in the late 19th century. In fact, Helena Blavatsky received an honorary degree of Apprentice Companion, Perfect Mistress, Sublime Elect Scotch Lady, from the Rite of Adoption. She was awarded with these titles by the 33rd degree Freemasons John Yarker, M. Kaspari, and A.D. Lowenstock. Here is a reprint of the Masonic certificate that Blavatsky received. There are many different views on the origins of Freemasonry. I will present the one which I feel is the most evidenced and well documented. Modern speculative Freemasonry wasn't officially established until 1717 in London with the founding of the First Grand Lodge. Prior to that, there were Masonic lodges in the late 16th century. You first have operative Masonry involving those who would work with stone and who were part of a stone guild that built cathedrals and buildings in the Middle Ages. Around the 17th century, these operative Masons started accepting people into their craft who were not simply stoneworkers. Soon Masonry was not simply limited to stoneworkers. They then later developed into modern speculative Freemasonry of today, which involves secret handshakes, codes, symbolism, mythology, and legendary. The earliest documentation of the word Freemason is in the calendar of the coroner's rolls of the City of London. This is dated 1378 AD, edited by Reginald Sharp and published in 1913. Commenting on the origins of Freemasonry, Harry Carr remarks, quote, "It developed in Britain out of the building trades and fraternities, whose history goes back some 600 years in England. I do insist, however, that our present-day speculative Freemasonry is directly descended from the operative Masonry, whose beginnings we can trace back to the earliest record of organization among Masons in 1356. As far back as 1917, as modern Masonry was already 200 years old, people were recognizing the connection Freemasonry and Theosophy had. In the 1917 work Heresies Exposed, W. Host remarks, quote, "Freemasonry viewed doctrinally is Theosophy." With respect to the previously mentioned Zeitgeist films and the Zeitgeist movement, I will demonstrate that after a thorough study into these teachings of Theosophy and Freemasonry, it becomes quite clear that this film and movement, which has captivated so many truth seekers, is nothing more than the externalization of Theosophy, Freemasonry, and the New Age to the public. This is important because if it turns out that Zeitgeist is leading people into Theosophical and Freemasonic ideologies, it means that rather than standing against the New World Order One World Government agenda, like the anti-New World Order movement is supposed to be doing, truth seekers are actually associating themselves with ideologies and organizations that are connected to the New World Order, which I will also demonstrate. I will now qualify this hypothesis since I have laid the foundation for Theosophy and Freemasonry. Theosophists and Freemasons, as part of their esoteric doctrine, taught that Jesus was the sun god, the S-U-N, in the sky, and that he was based on the age of Pisces within the zodiac. The Marxist Theosophist Annie Besant taught her students, quote, "Then the sun retrograded into Pisces at the time of the birth of Jesus Christ, the Pisces influence being shown by cures performed by stepping into pools of water, Christ choosing his first apostles from fishermen," unquote. Similarly, the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, taught, quote, "Ichthus, a fish. Some of his early disciples were fishermen. Pisces, a conventional shape for the fish," unquote. The notorious Freemason Manly Palmer Hall taught, quote, "During the age of Pisces, the fish was the symbol of divinity, and the sun god fed the multitude with 2 small fishes." In another context, Blavatsky reinforces Theosophy's belief about Jesus, quote, "For the salvation of the world, this was the sun, shorn of his golden rays, and crowned with blackened ones, symbolizing this loss as the thorns. Jesus and even Apollonius of Tyana were but epitomizers of the history of the sun." These doctrines are very sacred to Theosophists and Freemasons. The first section of the first film, Zeitgeist, externalizes these same Theosophic and Freemasonic beliefs, fringe views that historians and scholars dismiss. Zeitgeist repeats, quote, "Jesus is the Son of God." Now Jesus is the figure who ushers in the age following Aries, the age of Pisces, unquote. Now, noticing these parallels, one might think that Peter Joseph, the creator of Zeitgeist, was ignorant of the fact that he was indoctrinating people into Theosophic and Freemasonic ideologies. However, Zeitgeist is not only spreading these doctrines of Theosophy and Freemasonry, but Zeitgeist also associates itself with prominent Theosophists, Freemasons, New Agers, and occultists in their own transcript for the film, leaving little debate as to the connection it has to these groups. Zeitgeist listed all of its sources for the film in its online transcript, and among the names of people appealed to are Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, the Freemason Albert Churchward, New Ager Acharya S., New Ager occultist and theosophical apologist Jordan Maxwell, the Druid Gerald Massey, Edward Carpenter, the socialist and acquaintance of Theosophist, Freemason and Marxist Annie Besant, the Freemason Manly P. Hall, and the Druid Godfrey Higgins, who is associated with Helena Blavatsky. The fact that Zeitgeist chooses to associate itself with these prominent Freemasons, Theosophists, New Agers, and occultists shows us why the truth movement should avoid them. It is a well-known fact that these same esoteric organizations have openly stated that they wish to indoctrinate the public with their esoteric religious ideas and externalize their views to humanity, eventually resulting in a new world order for the age of Aquarius, which they all await with anticipation. Let me qualify this. As Theosophy grew, it produced another prominent woman named Alice Bailey, born June 6, 1880. She is one of the most influential Theosophists, and it was her who was responsible for convincing New Agers that humanity needs to make a one-world government and one-world religion for the age of Aquarius. In order to achieve this system, she deemed it necessary to teach humanity the religion of Theosophy and Freemasonry, the same doctrines that Zeitgeist is now spreading. Speaking on the spiritual war between esotericists and people who refuse to accept the New Age, she says, quote, "It will be fought largely with mental weapons and in the world of thought. It will involve also the emotional realm. From the standpoint of idealistic fanaticism, this inherent fanaticism will fight against the appearance of the coming world religion and the spread of esotericism. It must not be forgotten that only those souls who are on the probationary path, or the path of discipleship, will form the nucleus of the coming world religion. There is no question, therefore, that the work to be done in familiarizing the general public with the nature of the mysteries is of paramount importance at this time. When the Great One comes with his disciples and initiates, we shall have the restoration of the mysteries and their exoteric presentation as a consequence of the first initiation." Alice Bailey also reveals that Freemasonry is meant to produce advanced occultists and is in accord with the theosophical goals. Quote, "The Masonic movement, when it can be, divorced from politics and social end from its present paralyzing condition of inertia, will meet the need of those who can and should wield power. It is the custodian of the law, it is the home of the mysteries and the seat of initiation. It holds in its symbolism the ritual of deity, and the way of salvation is pictorially preserved in its work. The methods of deity are demonstrated in its temples, and under the all-seeing eye, the work can go forward. It is a far more occult organization than can be realized, and it's intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultists," unquote.
The main source of Zeitgeist is Acharya S. She advocates one world system under the age of Aquarius. This is very interesting, as the main source that this traces back to is Alice Bailey. You can trace this to one book in particular called The Externalization of the Hierarchy, which advocates this extensively and even openly admits this in the first few pages of that volume.
In his book, The Arcana of Freemasonry, the Freemason Albert Churchward that Zeitgeist appealed to gave the following admission, quote, "Can the unity of the world be accomplished by Freemasons? Yes, and by Freemasons only. There is a common misconception about Freemasonry, and that is that many people believe it is merely a friendly fraternity where men meet up to network and socialize. This is partially true, but there are elements of Freemasonry that are not so innocent. The Freemasonic Society was infiltrated in the late 18th century by an organization called the Order of the Illuminati. There's a lot of fictional, embellished information about the Illuminati, but if you sift through all of the data, there are some very important key facts. All historians will grant that the Illuminati certainly existed in Bavaria, Germany, and that it was founded in 1776 by a man named Adam Weishaupt. This organization was a type of revolutionary organization that sought political and societal reform. The order grew and became very popular. It was then outlawed by the patriotic ruler of Bavaria, Duke Karl Theodor. He issued 3 edicts against the Illuminati, the third being in 1787. Illuminati writings were discovered after raids of castles and arrests of members. These writings were then translated from Old High German by 2 men contemporary with the Illuminati, Abe Barrel and John Robison. The writings were published in their works Proofs of a Conspiracy and Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. The writings revealed that the Illuminati wanted a one-world system ruled by them, the overthrow of religion, and the infiltration of Freemasonry to achieve this, so that they could operate under another name and occupation. The founder of this order, Adam Weishaupt, stated, quote, "Do you realize sufficiently what it means to rule in a secret society, not only over lesser or more important of the populace, but over the best of men, over men of all ranks, nations, and religions, to rule without external force, to unite them indissolubly, to breathe one spirit and soul into them, men distributed over all parts of the world." The prolific Freemasonic author and historian Albert Mackey reports, quote, "To give the order a higher influence, Weishaupt connected it with the Masonic institution, after whose system of degrees in esoteric instruction and of secret modes of recognition it was organized. The order at first was very popular, and enrolled no less than 2,000 names upon its registers, among whom were some of the most distinguished men of Germany. It extended rapidly into other countries, and its lodges were to be found in France, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Italy. The original design of Illuminism was undoubtedly the elevation of the human race, but it cannot be denied that in the process of time, abuses had crept into the institution, and that by the influence of unworthy men, the system became corrupted. So fused with Freemasonry in the 18th century was the doctrine of elitism and globalization, the overthrow of religion, namely Christianity. The question is, did the Illuminati cease to exist after it was outlawed in Bavaria, or did it live on? According to historians like Mackey and others, the Illuminati infiltrated Masonic lodges all over Europe before it was persecuted by the Bavarian government. So with that in mind, how could the Bavarian government stop this order if it was already all over Europe? The answer is they couldn't have. The Illuminati was too big, and thus it continued under Freemasonry. The French historian Henry Martin reports, quote, "Weishaupt proposed as the end of Illuminism the abolition of property, social authority, nationality, and the return of the human race to the happy state in which it formed only a single family, without artificial needs, without useless sciences, every father being priest and magistrate." President George Washington himself was convinced that the Illuminati existed after 1785, when it was outlawed in Bavaria. He corresponded with the Reverend named G.W. Snyder, voicing his concerns about the Illuminati. This was written 13 years after the Illuminati was outlawed in Bavaria. George Washington states, quote, "I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plans and doctrines of the Illuminati. It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea that I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first or the pernicious principles of the latter if they are susceptible of separation, that individuals of them may have done it, or that the founder or instrument employed to found the democratic societies in the United States may have had these objects and actually had the separation of people from their government in view, is too evident to be questioned. From President Washington, we learned that he believed the Illuminati was nefarious and dangerous. He had little doubt about the Illuminati spreading to America by 1798. He was truly satisfied, or in other words, convinced of this fact. He thought it was too early for whole Masonic lodges to be striving for Illuminati objectives, but he did believe individuals within American lodges were certainly doing so. He believed the founder or instrument used to found the democratic societies in the USA may have had Illuminati objectives in mind, and that they had the separation of the people from their government in view. According to Washington, these things are too evident to be questioned. That same year, the president of Yale University, Timothy Dwight IV, spoke out against the Illuminati. Quote, "The great and good ends proposed by the Illuminati as the ultimate objects of their union are the overthrow of religion, government, and human society, civil and domestic." Joseph Willard, the president of Harvard University, said in a speech in New Hampshire, quote, "There is sufficient evidence that a number of societies of the Illuminati have been established in this land of gospel light and civil liberty, which were first organized from the Grand Society in France. They are doubtless secretly striving to undermine all our ancient institutions, civil and sacred. These societies are closely leagued with those of the same order in Europe. They have all the same objects in view. The enemies of all order are seeking our ruin. Should infidelity generally prevail, our independence would fall, of course. Our republican government would be annihilated." Speaking on this new Freemasonry that was infiltrated by Illuminati elitist doctrines, John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, remarked, quote, "I do conscientiously and sincerely believe that the order of Freemasonry, if not the greatest, is one of the greatest moral and political evils." Because this Illuminati doctrine of globalization and societal reform was fused into Freemasonry, later prominent Masons started voicing their anticipation of a new world order, one world system. One of the main claims of Zeitgeist is that the gospel story of Jesus is derived from the stories of previous pagan gods. They attempt to draw parallels between Jesus and these other gods to try to show that the story of Jesus is just a copycat story. Subsequently, these claims have all been debunked by scholars and historians. Zeitgeist appealed to Acharya S. for this theory. These claims can be found in her book, The Christ Conspiracy. Interestingly, it was the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, and the Marxist Theosophist Annie Besant who popularized these types of arguments and inserted them into the New Age movement. The emphasis is removing uniqueness from Jesus Christ and Christianity because to the New Ager, humanity is leaving Jesus' age of Pisces, which they believe is now evil. According to them, many people are still stuck believing in Christianity, holding the world back from their new spirituality. So what better way to fix this problem than to discredit the avatar of the previous Piscean age, Jesus Christ? They will even go as far as to say Jesus never existed in order to lead people away from Christianity. Thus the masses are now on board with the new Aquarian world order. Even modern New Agers around today will utilize this deception. New Age spokesman and disciple of Alice Bailey in Theosophy, Benjamin Creme, states, quote, "The 5 major initiations which take one to liberation have their symbolic enactment in the life of Jesus. That is what the gospel story is really about. It is a very ancient story and has been presented to mankind again and again in different forms long before the time of Jesus," unquote. When one compares Acharya S.'s book The Christ Conspiracy to Helena Blavatsky's book Isis Unveiled Volume 2, it becomes quite clear where Acharya got much of her material. For extensive rebuttals to this copycat thesis, see the following books, videos, and articles. The three things that Zeitgeist adopts from Theosophy and Freemasonry with respect to theology are 1. The belief that the story of Jesus was copied from other religions, 2. That Jesus is a representation of the Son, and 3. That Jesus ushered in the age of Pisces. It makes sense why Theosophists would spread these views, because they want a world system for the age of Aquarius, and in discrediting Christianity and connecting Jesus to astrology, they can get apostate Christians on board. But why then does Zeitgeist spread this propaganda? Interestingly, the creator of Zeitgeist, Peter Joseph, has wanted a world system or utopia paradise on earth since the release of the first Zeitgeist film.
And as far as the spiritual aspect of life, you know, we're all pure spirituality. Of course there's something outside of understanding because we're just a fragment inside this larger whole. I end Zeitgeist with a very positive note. We're talking about the consciousness, the whole consciousness, because you can scientifically orient yourself and even more importantly, spiritually orient yourself into a collective consciousness to realize that we're all one organism. And the moment people stop dividing themselves up and generating religious division, political division, the moment people stop fighting amongst themselves is the moment paradise will dawn.
Similarly, Zeitgeist's main source, Acharya S., has advocated the New Age of Aquarius that the elitist Theosophists and Freemasons await in her 1999 work, The Christ Conspiracy, quote, "But the future is now, and the maneuvers are being unveiled. As far as Christianity's role in this new age," Carpenter states, quote, "Christianity, therefore, as I say, must either now come frankly forward and acknowledge its parentage from the great order of the past, seek to rehabilitate that, and carry mankind one step forward in the path of evolution, or else it must perish. There is no alternative. Despite the vilification of the so-called New Age movement, the fact is that we are entering into a new age. The age referred to in the gospel tale is that of Pisces, and through contrivance and duplicity, coercion and slaughter, the fish god Jesus, the Piscean solar avatar, has indeed been with us. But now it is the close of the age, and his time is over. As Hancock says, we live today in an astrological no man's land, at the end of the age of Pisces, on the threshold of the new age of Aquarius. Traditionally, these times of transition between one age and the next have been regarded as ill-omened. Ill-omened verily, as the ongoing destruction of the earth and the endless warfare over ideology will indeed produce the Armageddon so long awaited and planned by those who cannot live for today but must look towards an afterlife. By realizing the cultural unity revealed behind the Christ conspiracy, however, humanity can pull together and prevent this fall to create a better world. 75 years before Zeitgeist's main source, Acharya S., penned that admission, the former president of Theosophy, Annie Besant, wrote something almost exactly the same, quote, "The equinox will reach the sign of Aquarius, coinciding the great cycle of influence. We can indeed hope to put a complete end to all the influence of the past cycle, with its tyranny, slavery, war, and cruelty. This is one of the great transitional epochs, and the karma before humanity as a whole, and to every group in particular, is to reform itself from slavery, female subjection, war, and cruelty, and establish a civilization based on humanness and interest in spiritual matters." New Age author Gail Fairfield explains what is expected for the supposed upcoming age of Aquarius. She states, quote, "The sign of Aquarius is the sign of focused concepts. It concentrates intently on developing its ideas and then applies them to the betterment of humankind. It has talent for rapidly correlating all the information available into a political, ethical, spiritual, technological system. Aquarius creates optimal features for individuals and for humanity because it needs alternatives, possibilities, and something to move towards. Overall, Aquarius is a reformer and visionary working to create its utopia," unquote. Isn't it interesting that right after Zeitgeist promoted the Aquarian New Age concepts in the first Zeitgeist film, the second film, Zeitgeist Addendum, then goes on to convince its followers to strive for a similar Aquarian one-world system, New World Order, called the Venus Project. Indeed, the solution offered by the film Zeitgeist Addendum is that humanity needs to unite into the very same thing that Theosophy and Freemasonry wants it to unite into. A one-world universal esoteric brotherhood of humanity, a new world order.
I think that the coming new system that the occultists speak of is it's really crucial to understand that what they're talking about is not going to look like what we think the New World Order's control grid will look like. They believe that the utopia will be one of a spiritual utopia, one that's free of wars and religion. It's easy for a lot of people to have idealistic views about it.
They're going to make it sound wonderful, which is what like the Zeitgeist addendum particularly does in the second part, where they talk about, oh, we're going to like, you know, have free energy, we're going to provide your needs. There's been talk about erasing all debts. That's more the Venus Project is more what is it Jacques Vallée? Jacques Fresco. That's more what he's into. Okay, this is his utopian approach to the New World Order, where I literally heard him say on the addendum, where he said we'll have no laws. All laws will be done away with. I thought to myself, oh, law. I mean, nobody's going to have to work. It's just going to sound like wonderful. I mean, he's talking about how are people going to make livings. Well, you won't have to, and you can do whatever you want. And if you make a painting, you can give it to some. I mean, this utopian world, but it's going to come at an extremely high price regarding the mark of the beast. It's not going to be what they're cracking it up to be, and most likely, it's only going to come with massive depopulation, and they're going to probably try to pull that off a number of different ways. But you have the Zeitgeist, this utopian approach, and then you also have the way the Ascended Master, some of the Ascended Masters say will be done through a project called Nasera, which, you know, is very similar in what the Zeitgeist Addenda talks about. It's just kind of a different flavor of it all. So which one they're actually going to be able to pull off, it's up, if the Lord lets them do it. It's kind of up to the Lord. It's hard to say which way it'll go.
Theosophist Alice Bailey concurs, quote, "The true communist platform is sound. Thus, it is not surprising why Zeitgeist advocates a similar system, as the connection they have to Theosophy and the New Age has already been established. Zeitgeist is merely the fulfillment of the New Age agenda, yet they are not telling you that. So the Theosophists and New World Order advocates would love nothing more than for people to join the Zeitgeist movement. In fact, at 47 minutes and 25 seconds into the Zeitgeist orientation lecture, Peter Joseph cites a quotation of Karl Pearson. What is interesting is that the man that Joseph admiringly appeals to support his worldview, Karl Pearson, was a notorious eugenicist and social Darwinist who advocated war against certain races. He was a socialist and contemporary of Karl Marx. In fact, Theodore M. Porter, in his work Karl Pearson, The Scientific Life in the Statistical Age, states, quote, "Pearson's appreciation of Marx was real, especially in early 1881. In his first essay on socialism, he called Marx, quote, one of the most extraordinary characters which this century has produced," unquote. New World Order research involving lectures, radio addresses, and writing used to be conducted by people such as William Cooper, Fritz Springmeier, John Todd, Randall N. Baer, and Kent Hovind. The unifying factor in all of these people was that they were all Christians. They would expose the New World Order and its New Age Luciferian communist aims. They would promote belief in Jesus Christ and the Word of God, and tell people to resist the mystery religions of Theosophy and Freemasonry while exposing them. However, all of these men have either been murdered or framed and jailed, silenced. William Cooper was shot dead in 2001 as he was ambushed. Fritz Springmeier was framed, discredited, and jailed. Randall N. Baer had his car ran off of a mountain pass. John Todd was framed, discredited, jailed, and then murdered. Kent Hovind was singled out for tax evasion and then jailed.
Okay, so Fritz Springmeier, you knew him, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you got some letters from him, is that?
Yes, when Fritz, when they put Fritz in prison, and there's been, it was pretty much a trumped up charge of, I think marijuana or something, talk of robbing a bank, this type of stuff. He got put in prison, and I started corresponding with him at that point because I had read several of his books and actually talked to him personally on several occasions. And we really, all we could do at that point is correspond.
Right.
So I've got several handwritten letters from him, and the last time I had heard from him was several years back, and he had been in it wasn't his fault, and I think it might have been arranged where he was in a fight. He didn't fight back.
Yeah.
The guy came and he told me that he was just using his head like a soccer ball, essentially.
Really?
Oh, it was sad.
Wow.
It was sad. And you know, Fritz, he never complained in these letters.
Yeah.
He never, it wasn't like he was like, oh, woe is me, I'm in prison and this or that. He always had a great attitude. He was trying to help other people in there.
Yeah.
I believe he had a ministry going.
Amen.
And, you know, I can't say enough good about Fritz Springmeier.
Now that the Christian New World Order researchers have been silenced, the truth movement has been infiltrated by people who purport to be against the New World Order, yet they advocate the New Age religion, a new utopia, and they all speak against Christianity and the Bible. The people who took over the truth movement and who are allowed to live and teach the public, such as Jordan Maxwell, Michael Tessarion, Peter Joseph, David Icke, and others, all of these people have one unifying factor. They are all strictly against Christianity, and they are all heavily associated with the New Age, Theosophy, and Freemasonry.
I think Jordan Maxwell is somebody who is just deceived. It's my personal opinion, and I could be wrong about this, that Jordan Maxwell is not a paid disinformation agent, or he's not somebody that is a high-level Satanist. I think that Jordan Maxwell is like many of us in the truth movement. We have been deceived by a lot of very clever disinformation. In his case, Blavatsky and the secret doctrine and that whole concept that really got him on a roll. Jordan Maxwell is a person who believes that the entities that he's involved with, that he had experiences with in the desert, etc., were Pleiadians. And I think that he thinks that they chose him to teach the world certain things. So in that context, it's very hard for him, or really anybody, to break free of that paradigm, because in that paradigm he gets to be this super special individual, and we all are vulnerable to that. If we have supernatural experiences where entities tell you that you are the chosen one and that you're going to do something, it's very hard not to believe them, because that's what you want. And so it's very hard, and of course, in doing so, in thinking, okay, these guys, these Pleiadians are on my side, when in actuality they're demons, they would coax him to do certain things, like he mentioned later, to go into these seances or whatever. In doing that, they can have more control over him, because they're demons and they have a system to get more control over a person. And if they do that, then he can start to be used more thoroughly by them, and he can do exactly what he promised them that he would do, to be a channel for them. And that's what his life has been about, being used, despite his probably very good intentions. He has been a tool of the New World Order. And so my view is that Jordan Maxwell's ends up promoting the New World Order. In that particular session, he goes on to say that the New World Order, that a bad time is coming, but that time must come in order for it to be destroyed, to bring the birth of the New World Order. Out of chaos comes order. So he was saying that the old system must be destroyed to come the new system. And that is exactly what the double-headed phoenix rising out of the ashes is all about. The old system of the New World Order is what we see building up all around us. It is going to get really, really bad, but it is going to be destroyed, in a sense, because that faucet is being run by evil. We all know that the things that are happening to the world right now are being done because of evil. So if evil's causing all those things, evil can also turn that faucet off at just the right time in order to make it seem like whoever stopped it, and therefore is the savior. So that new system will seem like the utopia that Jordan Maxwell says we all need to wait for. It's interesting that he says that at that time that's when the aliens, or gods, are coming back to stop it. That's the deception. That's what the people in the have been saying of the occultists, saying that that's what the demons are going to do for a long time. It's easy to be seduced, especially in Tessarion's case, who was raised since 11 years old saying that this is truth. He was raised by Rosicrucians, raised by these people by his own admission. He was doing the tarot cards at the age of 11 by his own biography. This is the example of being raised in a system, being told one thing is true and the other thing is not. It's biased is what it is, but nevertheless, I don't want I think in that reason these people deserve our sympathy. One way or the other, they are deceived. Even if they are intentionally doing it, which is possible in the case of Tessarian, and it's possible in the case of Maxwell too, I suppose. Even if they're intentionally doing it, they have to deserve our sympathy and even our prayers, because even if they're intentionally doing it, they're still deceived. But to wrap that up, Blavatsky and everything that came out of that was what 1 Timothy calls the doctrines of demons, and in the last days people will believe. The New Age and all of that was birthed by Blavatsky, and the New Age ideas will be used to bring in this new world order.
The negative impact of population growth on all of our planetary ecosystems is becoming appallingly evident. Unless nations will agree to work together to tackle these cross-border challenges posed by population growth, overconsumption of resources, and environmental degradation, the prospects for a decent life on our planet will be threatened.
But this callous disregard for the right to life of every human on the face of the earth has been predicted before in the New Testament. John was moved to write, quote, "Yea, the time cometh, that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service," unquote. The New World Order, ladies and gentlemen, will sail in on a sea of blood.
Well, if they steal the teachings of Christ and then create this Jesus deity, this Trinity, which isn't what it was, then point their fingers at themselves like they always do, expose the Babylonian symbolism, the satanic symbolism of the religions they created. They can do that in hopes to make you abandon all Christ's teachings as well, do you see? If you don't know that they stole those teachings, then you'll think that they created those teachings. They expose the deity as symbolism, and then everybody will have their big sigh of relief. Oh, we don't have to be good. We don't have to follow any of that. You see, the ultimate last-ditch attempt to discredit Christ. Why? That opens the door for the New World religion of sorcery, or Satanism, for the utopia. It has to be that, because there's no way these people doing what they're doing could have given the metaphors that Christ gave to create some symbolic deity. The two wouldn't go hand in hand. So, it really, from what I've been learning, what I've seen, they stole his teachings to draw people into both Christianity and Satanism. Then they're going to point the finger at the symbolism of Christianity and other religions so that people release all of the teachings of Christ, thinking it was a fraud, for the final entrapment. It's very important that you stay balanced. The primary foundation of what you are is love, and that's what they don't want you to know. And the easiest way to do that is to come in the name of love and slowly tear you away from it, redefine it, to ensnare you in the web.